and why that is so incredibly important more and more. So I've got some interesting stats to share with you. I've got a little bit of insight into what the global shifts are looking like. As Zamo said, please ask questions as we go. She's kindly going to monitor the Q&A, so she will interrupt if I don't pick them all up. But we will have time at the end of the session as well to be able to have some discussion and to chat. And obviously I will be available after the session as well. So we're going to be talking today about this concept of reclaiming childhood and moving childhood back from where it is currently situated, which is behind a screen. And I want to start because I think we're a South African chapter of global groups. Smartphone Free Childhood started in the UK in 2024, and we were soon after that we initiated here in South Africa. And our US colleagues in the States have probably have best said it as an introduction right here.
Hey kiddo, it's about time for bed, okay?
Okay.
Well, remember, there's a box in the corner over there with all the pornographic material that's ever been made in the world, even the really weird stuff that could scar you for life. I'm trusting you not to look in there, okay?
Okay.
Feelings are for losers.
Oh, and this guy's gonna be in your corner all night, just randomly spewing out hateful things. Just ignore him, okay? While I'm thinking of it, there's an order form on your desk where you can purchase illegal drugs. The mean girls from your school are gonna be standing there talking about you all night. And this Russian hacker's gonna keep asking for your password.
I'm not hacker. Amazon customer service.
Just need you to ignore him, okay? Love you, buddy.
We ask too much of our kids when we give them a smartphone. Let's change the norm. Together.
Maybe we go around the room and share social security numbers.
Join the movement at smartphonefreechildhoodus.com.
Yeah, I'll get it anyway.
So if only it was that easy, right? We could just give our kids the manual and give them the smartphones or the tablets and off they go. Well, we know as the results are coming out, the research from the last, well, now about 16, 17 years since the iPhone was first launched, that there has been a deeper and darker hole that has been dug for our children. Our South African children are no less exempt. So this is just, I'm sharing with you some of the stats from the work that we've done with grade 4 to grade 11 students in the last few years. And the results now will be looking even more dire than this. We would love to actually repeat some of this work. But yeah, about 2-3 years ago, a majority of our children were saying that they already had their own phones or tablets by age 10. And already 83% of them said they had access to social media by age 12. Now, remembering that on the Play Store, Apple Play Store, and the Google, Apple iStore and the Google Play Store, most of the social media apps are self-regulated. It's a self-regulated age of 13. There is no international body like in the film and media industry that actually sits and decides what age apps and games should be advertised at. So even though they're advertised at 13, by age 12 already most of our children are on social media because it's, of course, it's just too easy. You just put in a random age and away you go. You download your Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, Discord, whatever it might be. About 65% of them at that stage were telling us that they were allowed their phones and tablets in their rooms overnight. And the great majority, and believe you me, they would be telling us if they knew, they were saying that they had no parental controls or filters on their devices. And all of them would tell us that it was late at night, that most of the cyberbullying and the inappropriate stranger contact was happening. So you can see from this exactly what perfect storm we're dealing with here. We've got young kids, very immature prefrontal cortexes, where these platforms are perfectly designed to hack their young prefrontal cortexes, particularly impulse control. Their devices in their rooms overnight with no controls or filters that parents can use to pause or to stop them at any time. And we've got tired brains making bad choices late into the night, into the early mornings. And of course, our teachers are seeing that the next day with an epidemic of sleep deprivation amongst our youngsters. So this correlates very well with what the research is showing us. So Dr. Jonathan Haidt is a very famous social psychologist who operates out of Harvard. And his work that he published at the beginning of 2024, The Anxious Generation, The Great Rewiring of Childhood, it was really a very seminal point in our journey, those of us that have been involved in the online safety of our children, because he brought together all the research and correlated that. And basically, the sort of summary of his whole book is that in the last 14 years, or now about 16 years, parents have been making two very big but well-intentioned mistakes. We were overprotecting our children in the real world. So as the real world risks became to us more and more scary, we wanted to protect our children more and more and quite often keep them indoors. And we were underprotecting them online because we quite frankly didn't know what was going online. We didn't know what the algorithms were serving to them, because to us, we were getting served a very different online diet. And he's looked at the results of medical consequences, teen mental health consequences, and his data covered about 33 countries. It's subsequently been supported by even bigger data sets that have covered even bigger number of countries. And what he has been basically tracking is an increase in anxiety, depression, addiction, self-harm, and even suicide amongst our tweens and teens, which at the same time tracks along decreasing academic results, sleep scores, amount of family time, friends time, and exercise. And he's also in his research has distinguished between the impacts on girls versus boys. So girls being wired, particularly during puberty, to be very socially comparative. They're trying to fit in. They're trying to establish their identities. Are they good enough? Are they wearing the right clothes? Are they wearing the right hairstyles? Of course, a platform like Instagram serves them the mirror, which they probably don't need at this stage, because a mirror of perfection. And what he has been seeing is in girls much higher rates of anxiety, depression, and self-harm. But our boys, who are much more neurologically wired, and you're thinking back now, hundreds and even thousands of years ago, where when they hit puberty, they would have joined the other men and gone out to go and hunt, and to go and find new resources, perhaps go to war against another tribes to get, better pastures or better caves, etc. So their brains are primed perfectly to be hijacked by online pornography, gaming, and more recently, gambling platforms. And they are much more prone to suicide. So just to give you some interesting, just slightly differences between the male and the female brain as they hit their teen years. And so what the research has, and this is the more recent study as well, the even bigger study showed, is that receiving a smartphone, and why particularly a smartphone, why the focus on smartphone? Well, that's just because once a child is given a phone, that becomes a sort of 24/7 accessory, right? It fits in your pocket. It goes everywhere with you, to the bathroom, to your bedroom, to your mate's house, wherever. And so a smartphone just becomes this ubiquitous, add on this, it becomes a part of the child. So what we are seeing, the latest data set, is that conclusively says that receiving a smartphone before age 13 is associated with poorer mental health outcomes later, with females particularly being prone to a lot of that, just because of the way they're wired at this time. And so Jonathan Haidt is very much in the talks that he's been given the last 2 years, and I would urge you, to go and have a look and listen to him. He's been interviewed by Trevor Noah and John Huberman and Oprah. There's a whole range of wonderful short podcasts and little snippets out there that you can tap into. But he recognizes the fact that we were, as parents, and I'm the mother of an 18-year-old now, so I've been living this for the last decade myself, that we didn't want our child to be isolated and alone. And that was even more pronounced, obviously, during COVID. So although we maybe common sense or our gut feels told us that there was something wrong, that they were accessing content that they were far too young to access, that they were spending more and more time on their devices, that we were losing out in terms of family time, that perhaps there was a co-parent operating and that co-parent was big tech, we as parents really actually stepped in and forced our children to shut down their media accounts or took away those devices because we really didn't know what we were doing and how bad it was. So we were, a little bit about like that, story of that frog in the water that's slowly heating up, and we didn't know when to jump until it was too late. And so why we're asking now, why should we be concerned, and what can we actually now do about it? So it's really because of the brain development at this time, and this, we cannot, from an evolutionary perspective, we cannot speed up this brain development. So obviously from birth, we've got the brain stem, which is already working with feelings. A baby is well protected because of its brain stem for fight, flight, or freeze responses. Around about the age 7 to 9, which 9 is now more and more the age at which children are starting to get their own smartphones, that's when the limbic system is developing. So it's about emotions and attachment, and it's in a very important part. It's the feeling brain, part of our brain, and yeah, there's just a lot of very much emotion in that part of that development. The cortical brain, which is what we call the thinking brain, only it comes online at about 4 or 5 years old, but it's much slower development. It only completes its development round about 25. And in fact, a lot of researchers are saying that they are seeing that development even pushed out further. And it's possibly because of the time that we're actually spending on devices. We're not getting enough real life responses to actually give that cortical part of the brain the inputs that it needs. But that's where the rational thought develops. It's all our executive functioning skills, our impulse control, our empathy, planning, risk versus consequence. So that is developing a lot slower. That is like almost, if you think of your teenager as a Ferrari, the cortical brain is the brakes on the Ferrari, and the limbic system is the accelerator. So a teenager is a lot of acceleration, it's a lot of emotion, and it's got very faulty brakes. And we are introducing social media, we're introducing a lot of different platforms, of course, which hack these little brains. They give them huge amounts of dopamine hits, which want them coming back for more. And so you can understand that your average teen, if you're telling your teen, please, to get off their phone, to put the phone down, it's time for dinner, it's time to go to bed, they are almost not hearing that because their impulse control, such that it is already developed in whatever small development state it is actually being hacked. So this is what we're dealing with our teen, and teenagers are wonderful beings. And this is what all of us went through, was this balance between the thinking and the feeling brain. And this is what anyone who's parenting a teen right now is going through, or if you have parented a teen, you'll remember this, is that you're dealing with a need for risk and reward and peer approval. It's an emotion first and a logic second kind of a brain, immediate gratification. And there is still very little. In fact, we as parents have to help them to develop this part of thinking, like make good decisions. Let's sit down and think about this. Let's plan. How are we going to do this? Let's look at the risks versus the consequence. So all of that is something that is very much part of what we are doing in parenting. And in the modern world, we are very much trying to control the accelerators on these Ferraris, because the accelerators are almost being given a it's almost like pimp my ride now. The accelerators are being given extra gas by this need and this drive for even more dopamine because of what they're being exposed to so early. Self-confidence and self-worth is one of the things that we very much see are being affected by the amount of time they spend online and the content where they spend it. And again, it's just because the algorithms are hacking those same neural systems that evolved to support all those necessary teenage life skill development, exploration, bonding, and identity formation. Now all of that is being offered online, but of course, it's not a real experience. And our teachers are seeing this. They're seeing the results of children coming to school with with brains that are expecting more and more dopamine to fully function and to get excited about life and to get excited about learning, topping this off also with tired brains coming to school. But they are trying to teach brains that expect more and more and more fantastical input. And so what they're telling us is they see children with reduced frustration tolerance. They can't cope with delayed gratification. They can't self-regulate. Their anxiety is driven even higher because they're not being stimulated, in fact, overstimulated. And it's not about how much time our kids are spending on screens. I've actually just posted this morning a wonderful clip from a pediatric occupational therapist that we had the pleasure of having on a webinar last week, and she was explaining it's not so much just about the time spent on screens, but it's also the missed opportunities. Because the more time, obviously, we all spend on our screens, the less time we have for real life. And particularly in childhood development, right up to 18 and even beyond, as we know, now to 25, we need a lot of real life interaction and experience to learn many things, like reading facial cues, learning grit and resilience through actual real life challenges. Another reason why we are saying more and more in this world that AI is fine for adults. It's fine for us to go and use Gemini or ChatGPT to help us, craft something or draft something or get ideas. But for children, it's like constantly letting them take the elevator instead of the lifts. They're not learning that grit and that resilience. They're not priming those neural pathways. So it's actually a very dangerous invention if we're going to let children loose on it. We have to help them at this stage in their lives to develop those deep focus and those deep neural pathways, which can only be shaped by real life experience. It actually cannot be shaped by online. So we're really, our organization is about helping parents to rethink about childhood, rethink about the fact that play in childhood, and we're talking about teens playing as well, play is not a reward, play is actually a necessity.
Sorry about that, Kate. Just a reminder,
okay.
Please mute yourself, guys. Thank you.
I just wondered if we had a question there. And this is all about building a healthy brain, building this executive functioning, making our children, actually future-proofing our children. So really, if you want to future-proof your child, you've got to get it out into the real world, let it try and scratch that boredom itch, get it playing as much as possible, get it exercising, get it creative, get it doing lots of different things, rather than letting it spend on time on a screen. The screens are completely intuitive. I promise everybody, your children will not lose out if they're not coding by the age of 7, if they're not learning, I don't know, Arabic by the age of 10 on Duolingo. Your children are all going to be absolutely fine. I actually guarantee, and I will, come back to me in 10 years' time, those of you that have small children and that follow this approach, and tell me whether your children are better off than the children that spend their childhood on screens. Have they learned better life skills? Are they people that actually can meet this huge new world that's coming their way with the character and with the executive functioning that they really need? So adolescence is not a crisis. Adolescence is normal. We all went through it. Our children, the next generation is going to go through it. It's the greatest window we have for huge development of that brain, but it just needs the right environment in order to really maximize it. Not a dysfunction, not a stage of dysfunction, but just a critical period. So why are we, let's go back to this idea that has been positioned by Jonathan Haidt and other experts. When we look back the last 15 years, why, as parents, were we increasingly given our children access earlier and earlier to an online world that cannot be filtered? And as an expert in spending the last decade of my life trying to find the best parental controls, trying to help parents to set the right settings on their children's devices, I can tell you that nothing is foolproof. It is incredibly difficult for parents to manage what children do and see online. It is like a game of whack-a-mole. So why have we been doing this when probably our gut feel and our sense has been this is doing them great harm? Well, I'm going to let Jonathan Haidt tell you a little bit about that.
Why are we all doing it? Only because everyone else is. That's it. That's the reason. This stuff is not made for kids. This stuff is toxic for kids. Really, it should be, minors should not be on it. It should be 18. But there's a consensus building that while 18 might be best for mental health, 16 is a kind of a reasonable compromise. In the UK, they're exploring that. The Florida bill just did that. A number of states are doing that. In my book, I recommend 4 norms by which we can escape from this trap. The first is no smartphone before high school. Just use flip phones or phone watches. The second is no social media till 16. It might sound impossible, but because if your child is the only one, right? If you're the only one who doesn't have it, it's incredibly painful. But what if half the kids in your school didn't have it? Well, then it's not so bad. The third one is phone-free schools. We've just got to get them entirely out of the schools. There's no role for them. And then the fourth is far more independence, free play, and responsibility in the real world. If we're going to cut back on screen use a lot, especially in elementary and middle school, we have to give them what we took from them, which is play, which is each other. And so if we have to, now, it used to be you could just send the kids out, come home when the streetlights are on. I understand that's going to be harder today. We have to be more intentional. But if you can find ways to just help your kids hang out together with no screens, they're going to have a great time.
I can see all the teens in this room reacting to that. When you said phone-free schools, you should have seen her face like, are you kidding me? A phone-free school? But I agree that if everybody is doing it, it makes it really, really hard for your child not to be a part of it. So it has to be a community, everybody has to decide as a community. And I think one of the reasons why people haven't decided, because people actually don't know how bad it is. So you are sounding the alarm, and you are sounding the alarm, and this generation really is the generation that we're experimenting with, and they're going to pay the price for it because people don't yet understand how bad it is and how damaging it's going to be to the future.
That's right. I would just say 4 years ago, I think that statement would be perfectly correct. And then we had COVID and everyone was confused. And now that COVID is receding, I'm finding actually most of us kind of knew this, like most of us felt like, wait, this is really wrong. Something is really wrong here.
So as a parent, I think I'm in that category. I felt it, it's a sense deep down. I don't know if that feeling is shared by other parents on this call. If you have also been feeling this, but that was both Dr. Becky Kennedy, who's a child psychologist, and Jonathan Haidt on that talk show with Oprah. And really, the two of them, plus many other experts in this field, were the start of what we have now seen as the global movement of smartphone-free childhood organizations around the world. And it's really a response to this call that we need a collective shift to new norms, that if I'm the only parent that's going to delay giving my child a smartphone, it's just my child that's going to get left out. Because everyone else, perhaps they're in grade 6 or grade 7, if everyone else has got a smartphone, for sure everybody else has got social media. And as soon as that happens, their social lives move onto social media platforms. And so it's this constant push and pull that parents have. If I'm the only one, if my child is the only one, it's just my child that gets left out. So this is really what our organization is about. It's pinned on these key concepts that we want to shift this idea that children don't need access to smartphones and to iPads, because iPad is just a bigger version or tablet of a smartphone, but they don't need them before high school. That there's ways to keep them connected. We are seeing a reversion back to landlines, to voice over internet landlines. We have seen what we used to call dumb phones, but are now called feature phones, like the Nokia 105. We're seeing a whole, revision of those where kids can still contact parents. They can still do basic text or calling. And we're seeing globally around the world now regulations coming in. Obviously, Australia has started that. The EU is signaling that they'd like to look at it from a European perspective, although various European countries have already started this process of regulating for minimum age restrictions for social media platforms, which are considered particularly harmful to our tween and teen development, their beliefs and their values. One of the biggest shifts we've seen since all of this evidence started coming out, in fact, globally, has been a shift towards phone-free schools. And here in South Africa, we've seen a lot of upswell of that too, where academic learning spaces are being created in which teachers can teach and learners can learn without the distraction and the constant pinging. Some of the research shows that an average teenager gets 197 notifications an hour from social media apps in 1 hour. So if you're a teacher with your children all got their smartphones in their pockets or in their bags in their classroom, you are teaching against the distraction of each of those children, 197 notifications an hour in one lesson. And of course, as parents around the world, and indeed in South Africa, have started saying, yes, I think it's a good idea to delay smartphones, of course, the question has come up about the use of EdTech, particularly in our primary schools, particularly with more and more of our primary schools having a BYOD, a bring your own device policy, from a cost-saving perspective, and requiring parents from as young as grade 3 or grade 4 to invest in devices, which then are carried back and forward to school. And, you know, of course, parents are tearing their hair out because they are now required to manage these devices in the afternoon and the evening. And of course, the children are all saying, but I need it for homework. I'm doing homework. And it is creating a lot of real tension in our school communities. So that is another big area that we focus on as well. So smartphone-free childhood, we are a NPC. We have our public benefit organization certificate. We're exactly a year old now, although we started in early 24 as a movement, and we decided last year to register as an NPC to try and see if we could get some trickle funding in. Really, we are a movement that is entirely volunteer-based and to some extent even volunteer-funded. We have very basic costs, of course, but we've got great plans. We obviously beg, borrow, and appeal to all the pro bono services that we possibly can. And so what we have, really, what the core offerings that we work on is that we have developed a parent pact for parents of primary school children to come together. The idea is that we're stronger together, and that we can together stand firmer to delay smartphones until high school. So every primary school in the country has been inserted into a drop-down list on our website, and parents can go in and select their child's primary school and their grade, and they can essentially pledge that they want to be part of this movement. They get a monthly email, and it just has a running list of fellow signatories, so that really it's about finding your tribe and building your community within a school community. So, for example, perhaps you're keen on having conversations about device-free play dates, for example. I'm sure that's something that many parents on this group here have had had a tussle with. And so what we do is we are continually updating our website resources, but we are very much oriented around conversation guides. So conversation guides around having that conversation with another parent for device-free play dates, or having a conversation with another caregiver or a grandparent around why you want to delay smartphones, because quite often it's our grandparents who think they are doing the family a great favor by buying the children these devices. And again, remembering that what the algorithms serve the grandparents is not what the algorithm serves quite quickly to a tween or a teen. So conversation guides around that, guides around how to talk to your children about why you as a family are going to delay smartphones. And of course, delaying smartphones, at least in primary school, also allows parents then to delay the advent of social media into their children's life. So it's got a double purpose here, and allowing families really to connect more, to spend more of that very precious family time that goes so very quickly, because our children are just not being sucked in all the time onto the screens. So we have a very interesting, currently a very interesting distribution. We see a peak in about grade 5 currently of our packs. So we are almost at 450 schools across the country with active parent packs. And so what this shows to us is that because the pact has only been going, parent pact system, we launched it in October last year. So we obviously have missed a lot of parents that already perhaps made the decision around grade 4 and grade 5, because that is often the pressure point at which we are seeing families being pressured to give children access to smart devices. So we obviously realize that we missed a lot of the current grade 6s and 7s. And it's very encouraging to see how many grade 6 and 7 packs we actually have in the system, that we have a lot of families that are committing to this. And it shows us as well that we need to focus our attention on parents of children as young as possible, and try to get them on board as young as possible, while obviously the priorities for them are probably primary caregiving, to start seeding this idea that this decision is going to be coming up into their lives, and we want to give them informed information around how to make that decision. And so often we ask the question about, why do we only have primary schools in the pact? Why don't we have all the pre-primary schools, for example? And really, it's just about resources. We're a very small team of volunteers. And so at this stage, we're really focusing on primary school. And we obviously offer lots of talks. We are trying to do lots of education and disseminate a lot of information into the pre-primary school space. We've developed a manual sign-up pledge. Quite often a child in pre-primary is there for 1 or 2 years, and then they all graduate into various different primary schools. So given the fact that parents often are going into a primary school still to deliver their child there, and there's quite often manual sign-up forms for the cake sale and the raffle tickets and whatever, we have a poster, basically a pledge, a paper pledge that can be printed out and can be put up there to try and get some discussion going. And we are starting to give many more talks into the pre-primary environment. But yes, this, I think, just some interesting information to see how we are growing. And then our second big focus is phone-free schools. And we have developed a register where schools that have decided to go phone-free can actually apply to be registered, and they submit their policy so that we can review the policy and check that it meets what is required of a phone-free school, which is really an away for the day policy. So there's a lot of debate, anyone who's following it in the UK at the moment, around legislation that's being promulgated. As initially they drafted it with a no see, no hear option. And so the no see, no hear option would be where you allow learners to bring phones to school, and they just have to be switched off. Now, obviously, you would, completely understand that a phone switched off in a blazer pocket or in a bag is going to be a huge temptation. Children are still going to want to go to the bathroom to check their phones. They are going to want to use them between classes. They're going to want to use them during breaks. And so in the UK, what they have just done this week is that they have decided that they're going to exclude the no see, no hear option, that it's literally an away for the day policy. So either schools can mandate that no phones at all, smartphones are brought to school at all, or they have an option which is typically either phone lockers or pouches, in which the phones need to be docked at the beginning of the day, and then they can be released at the end of the academic day. And of course, this means that children can still bring feature phones. So many schools, in fact, Hilton College at the beginning of this year adapted their policy. And so grade 8, 9, and 10s can all bring a feature phone to school for the first 3 years. So that's, one of these phones that can only call and make texts, and you can send texts. and that it's only after that, the 2 senior years, that that learners may have a smartphone on campus. And again, it's regulated within certain timeframes, and particularly overnight, so that those learners are getting proper sleep. Of course, they're a boarding school, and so they have a lot more ability to put in this kind of structure. So we've seen a lot of schools in our country starting to go phone free. And it's a huge mix, from private schools to public schools. We're seeing so many schools in under-resourced areas that are applying to be recognized as phone-free schools. And it's so interesting that the heads of these schools are telling us that even though the school may be quite under-resourced from learning material perspective, they feel that it's much more important to try and reduce the digital drama that's coming onto their campus, and trying to address issues like gangsterism and drug dealing and cyberbullying, and that they feel that they really can't teach and give those children the education they deserve in the face of smartphones as well. So just a very interesting observation, because of course in the work that we do, a lot of the feedback we get is, yes, but the digital divide. So, you know, how are children in under-resourced schools going to be able to learn if they can't access material online? And it's a very real issue for our country. But we also have to be looking at the one harm, which is the lack of resources, being replaced with another harm by requiring children to have a smartphone in order to do that. So yeah, we are very much infused with the conversations around all of this and trying to find the best way. We are engaging with the Department of Basic Education at a national and provincial perspective to look at what their policy is around this, and how we can strengthen the South African Schools Act, because this is fundamental safeguarding of children, which of course is what schools are mandated to do as they're acting in loco parentis. So in our advocacy work, of course, we are also with the various regulators, the Department of Communications and Technology, the Information Regulator, the Film and Publication Board. There's a whole range of them. We are in conversations around what is South Africa's response to this global shift to regulate minimum age restrictions for social media. What should that look like from a South African perspective? In addition, as I mentioned, to looking at regulations around smartphones in schools. So we are very focused on building lots of resources, much of them very much conversation oriented, you know, real guides that parents and educators can tap into and can use. We have a very vibrant WhatsApp community which spreads across all the provinces. We have a newsletter which goes out once a month. We run webinars, regular webinars with various experts who share of their wonderful knowledge. And really it's about being action orientated, solution finding, and finding a supportive and non-judgmental, trying to create a supportive and non-judgmental platform and community for parents to find their way and to look at the information and to decide what's really best for their families and for their children. So that's the QR code. If anybody would like to explore, that takes you to the link tree. So all our information is there, all the bits and pieces that you can join and you can have a look at. If your children are too old for primary school, maybe you're battling, you know, with smartphone usage at your school. We have guides on our website to help you start the conversation with your school. We've got guides to start conversations about how much EdTech is being used in schools, how much screen time they are sitting on during classes. And of course, if you do have a child in pre-primary or primary school, then go in and have a look at our parent pact, and do join us. So that's a little bit about us, about our NGO, about what we're doing. I think obviously we would love to explore if there's any other organizations that are on this call, if our work resonates with you. Yeah, we'd love to reach out. We love collaborating with all the good that other organizations are also doing. And obviously, yeah, if there's any questions, I'd love to take questions from the team that's on. Sam, do you want to let me know if there's anything that particularly came up?
I've actually got a question on my side,
Yes.
Kate. So I know that you've mentioned like kind of stopping or maybe delaying the usage of smartphones for children. What about people who've already exposed their children to smartphones? How do you kind of backtrack that? Because I think obviously some people wouldn't have known like the kind of things, the harms that they could cause. And so the question would be, how do I then help my child now that I've exposed them to a smartphone already?
Absolutely. And so, you know, we often say press pause, go play. And there's also press pause, rewind. And absolutely, I think it's definitely a case of you don't necessarily want to go cold turkey, but it's a case of relooking for what does the child really need that smartphone for? Could it be replaced with a feature phone for whatever the needs are? Maybe it's a maybe it's a family, you know, that doesn't live together, and the child, you know, needs to talk to other parents or other caregivers, and it might be a case of that we want to swap out the device for a safer option for another couple of years. It might be that you want to relook at the apps that the child is on, and you yeah, all of this is going to be difficult because you're going to be sitting with a child that definitely doesn't want to have the phone or the apps taken away from it. It might mean that you want to reduce the amount of time, because certainly the amount of time that our children are sitting on their phones, on social media, also counts in terms of how much content and how much harmful content is being shown to them. You would also want to put on controls. So if your child is on Instagram, Snapchat, or TikTok, there are built-in controls. You're welcome to reach out to me, and I can send you, you know, the how-tos on that. You want to be able to, I think, put yourself in a position as a parent where you are owning your license to parent, and you are saying to your child and to the rest of the family that I am doing this in your best interest. So, you know, it's not dissimilar to a child that you realize is perhaps addicted to Coca-Cola, and you realize that they are getting far too much sugar, and we're going to need to do something about this, because otherwise you're going to be dealing with obesity in the teen years. You've got, you know, huge emotional swings as the sugar high hits and then it falls. And so you would do something about that, right? You would say, okay, you know, this is not good for you. Let's look at what, you know, the science tells us, and let's look at alternatives, because as your parent, I want to see you succeed. I want you to be healthy, both physically and mentally. I want you to be thriving, and eventually I want you to be able to leave the nest and be a fully functional adult. That's my goal as a parent. So yeah, there's various routes that need to be taken by parents when we are wanting to relook at it. And I think it's also about finding your tribe. You need a supportive tribe to be able to do this. You need to reach out to the other parents in your child's peer group and say to them, hey, you know, I've been reading up about this. Will you go and have a look at some of this information? I really think we're doing our kids a disservice. How do you feel about this? You know, can we have more device-free play dates? Let's all agree that the smartphones and the tablets are not going to go along to each other's houses. Let's definitely not have them at sleepovers. You know, I started this journey myself because my son, who's now in matric, was exposed to online pornography on another child's iPad on a sleepover in grade 4. And, you know, we can do whatever we can to protect our own children and our own families within our own small bubble.
Non, désolé, je suis entre deux réunions en même temps, donc ça me... Donc, je suis d'accord avec vous. Voilà, vous pouvez me...
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that.
So we need to, you know, expand our bubbles, because whatever we do in our own family, you know, we need to try and connect with other bubbles too. So yeah, Zamo, this really is about learning as we go, because a lot of us didn't know what we didn't know. And now we're responding to information that's being presented to us, and we have a choice. What are we going to do with it?
Thanks, Kate. Another question would be around, I know you mentioned that kids won't miss out on much if they're not a coder by this age of 6 or so. But I know that some parents may be concerned about their children maybe kind of being left behind, so to say, with kind of the things moving and technology moving. And you did mention that schools sometimes as well are encouraging for people to bring their own devices into the space. And so how do you find a good balance between not feeling like your child is maybe perhaps being left behind from learning and being aware of what's around them, but also being able to still use smartphones within an adequate or safe space of time?
So all of the modern tech is highly intuitive. None of our children will miss anything if they were to wait until high school. Schools themselves obviously are weaving in digital learning and digital platforms. So particularly in primary schools, the schools that we work with, we are very much advocating school-owned and school-managed devices. So a reversion back, and we're seeing this a lot now in the UK and the US, where they have a longer period in which they can have a look at whether integration of EdTech has really benefited the education system. And interestingly enough, it's showing that it actually has deteriorated. So there's a big knee-jerk action happening in many European countries and the US against the amount of EdTech being used in education. In fact, Sweden has just regulated now going back to a pen and paper based primary education system for this very reason. So school-owned and school-managed is optimal way to go. So good old-fashioned computer area, computer lab is definitely the option, where children might go to do a particular class that perhaps the learning can be supplemented, and that's always what we're looking at. It's not a replacing of the education, but is it supplementing the education in some way? But it's not the slide that we've seen, and particularly it started in COVID, where children, went home and they had to learn from home. And so they needed devices to do that. And those devices then ended up going back into the school system. They do not need one-on-one devices for a proper educational system and actually the optimal education system. They need a lot more interpersonal teaching. In fact, the research is showing that particularly when it comes to reading and writing, or reading is best done on paper. There is also something to do with the turning of a page of a book that helps to embed the information. That screen-based learning when it comes to teaching reading is far inferior, in fact, to paper-based and one-on-one in person. So as all of this is being looked at, and as we see other countries are really grappling with the research and are looking at the education systems, I think we need to sit up and take note as well, and to be very close to what's happening. And I think as parents, having lots of conversations with our schools about the real need for devices, particularly I'm saying in primary school, do children really need to have their own one-on-one devices? Which classes are actually, which subjects are actually benefiting? Does the research show that they're benefiting from being supplemented by tech platforms? And then how is that being rolled out and managed at school? And so, if children are sitting in their seats for 6 hours of the school day on screens doing work there, those children are being incredibly affected, both from a physical perspective, but also from an eye, brain, a whole mental health perspective. They're coming home in the afternoon, and then parents are giving them what they think is still another hour or 2 hours of screen time, whether it's TV or time on their screens. Those child's brains are completely and utterly being depleted. So yeah, this is as I say, lots of conversation guides that we've developed on our website to go and have a look at. And it's just a very hot topic. We're all feeling our way, and I think needing a healthy dose of common sense, which, as we all say, is not so common anymore.
Thanks for that, Kate. Does anyone else have any questions? Please feel free to put some in the chat. I do have another question here for you, Kate. How much does parents' behavior influence children? I know many of us are very guilty of being ourselves on our phones, kind of aimlessly scrolling throughout the day. Yeah. And so if we're now trying to be the same people encouraging our children to get off our smartphones, what would you encourage we do as parents as well to be able to kind of find the good balance of showing the children, or kind of like maybe mirroring the good behavior that we want to see from our children as well? Yeah,
Salma. So it absolutely starts with us from a very young age, from when that little baby is tiny. It needs lots of time to look in your eyes. It needs it's called the serve and return. It needs to see expressions and be able to replicate them. There's a whole process that goes on. If a parent is sitting on their phone rather than engaging that baby, there's a lot of neural development happening that is going to be missed. So it's parent role modeling is absolutely fundamental. Again, we talked about this in our webinar last week. All of this is all our webinars are put up there on our YouTube channel for anybody who is interested in going and having a look. And it really does start. We as parents have to be so mindful of what we're doing all the time, how much time we're spending, because the reality is our children are always watching us.
Oh, definitely. And then I think the last thing would be, how do you, from my side anyway, I don't know if anyone else has a question, but within the school system itself, you mentioned that some schools have got like a system around like bringing your own device and those kinds of things. How do you maybe start that somewhat difficult conversation with the school to kind of say, hey, are you guys aware of the things that smartphones could be doing to damage the children? Especially if it's a school that really encourages people to bring smart devices into the space. And so how do you then start to even maybe change an entire system? Because it feels like a school is a bit bigger than just changing an individual. And so for me, it would be, how do you even start to have the conversation? Who would you start with? What would you recommend maybe from your side?
Yeah. So we help a lot of parents with this and a lot of schools, because sometimes it's the school that wants to pivot to being smartphone free and they're getting pushback from the parents. So it works both ways. And so from a parent perspective, it's always good to get a couple of members that are going to support you. I also say try and get a couple of dads. So some of the schools you've seen that have been most successful in having discussions with schools around use of tech in schools or about smartphone free schools have roped in a few dads. And I think that's the reality, is that we need more dads' voices as well in this space. But nevertheless, try to gather a group of like-minded parents around you. I think the point is also the schools are under a lot of pressure. They're also trying to do their best. Teachers are incredibly busy and pressurized individuals. I don't think there's anybody. I certainly would not want to be the head of a school in this day and age. I think it must be an incredibly difficult job. So I think we also need to approach these conversations with a sense of finding a constructive solution and always keeping the best interests of the children in mind, because that's really why we're doing it. It's all about the children. And so again, we've developed conversation guides for how to open up these conversations, how to start them, what sort of points you might want to cover, either in a request for a meeting, and obviously in a meeting itself. But I think it's always to keep this keep the emotion low and keep the solution finding high. So let's approach this in a way that we find the best outcome for the entire school community.
Definitely. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kate. I didn't see any hands or anything else that came up in the chat. I don't know if I've missed anything else. Guys, if you don't have any more questions for Kate, I think what we'll do is we will share SFC's email addresses, as well as where you can be able to reach out to them should you want to partner up for your own organizations, or if you as a parent maybe might need a bit of encouraging and a bit of a push. Kate, I wanted to check with you. We do have NGOs that are not based in South Africa. Are you guys looking at spreading the movement out into the rest of Africa as well? And can other NGOs who are in other parts of Africa reach out to you to find out how that is possible?
That would be wonderful. So we've had approaches from the groups in both Namibia and Zimbabwe who are quite keen. What we are looking at, if we can get funding, is that we would love to have a Southern African website where we could also upload schools from other countries. So funny enough, we've had quite a few applications from Zimbabwean schools for our phone-free school register. But there's definitely the potential there. We would love to do that, because I think, as we say, we are stronger together, and it's all about standing together. It's all about, being part of a broader community and doing the very best we can for all of our children.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kate. I think This was such an eye-opener for myself as well, as someone who was always trying to be a good role model for the kids that are around me. And so I think, thank you so much for this. I think everybody can reach out to you. Please do reach out to Kate and the SFC team if you've got any more questions. Please do go onto the website to find the guides to be able to start those difficult conversations. And even if you've got maybe a query that you might not be sure of, please reach out to them. They might be able to assist you. And if you're looking to partner up maybe for your own organization in your own country as well, for the schools there, they're also available to you to be able to start those conversations as well. But thank you so much, Kate. I think it was just an informative session, and we really do appreciate your time. Big thank you to you and Claire as well. Please send my thanks to her as well in her absence. But yeah, big thank you to everybody. And guys, thank you so much for joining us. I know that some of you were coming from other sessions and